About a month ago, I swapped over my main studio computer from a custom-built PC tower to a MacBook M4 Pro Max. So I went from a desktop to a laptop, and since then I've had so many questions. Why did I swap from Windows to Mac? Why am I using a laptop instead of a desktop? Is it actually powerful enough to power my entire studio? How is everything connected to a MacBook? Why do I want to be portable? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about all of that. I'm going to run you through the exact build that I did for my MacBook. I'm going to talk about how I use a docking station to run the entire studio off of one cord. I'm going to talk about why I chose Mac over Windows, and I'm going to kind of give you my first impressions after using the MacBook Pro M4 Max for about a month and tell you kind of what it can handle. This is not going to be a super techie benchmark video. There are tons out there that already discuss all of that. I'm just going to be talking about my experience with this and how it's been handling everything I've thrown at it so far. So we're going to dive in and look at all of that, but before we do, my name is Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. If you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We do videos like this every single Friday. And if you want to be entered to win our weekly giveaway, all you have to do is leave a comment down below before January 20th. We'll pick one comment at random and we'll announce the winner on our Instagram. So make sure that y'all follow us over there so you can see if you won. You'll be able to pick any sample pack, preset pack, MIDI pack from our website, Make Pop Music, completely for free. So now that that's all out of the way, let's dive in and let's start talking about the brand new MacBook. The biggest question I got was, Austin, what are the specs of your MacBook? I'm sure you built it really powerful. I run huge sessions. I do screencasting. We edit 4K video for the YouTube channel. So don't get scared off when you see this build. It is pretty intense, but this is what I am working off of right now. It is the 16-inch MacBook Pro. It is a 2024, and it's their brand new M4 chip. So I got the Max, and I've got it with a 16-core CPU and a 40-core GPU. So this thing is the most powerful chip that they make for a laptop. I went ahead and opted for this nano texture display. I really, really like that. If you are getting the MacBook Pro, that's like a $150 upgrade, and it is so worth it. The screen looks amazing. It doesn't smudge as bad. It doesn't glare as bad. And then other than that, I went ahead and boosted this thing with 128 gigabytes of unified memory, basically RAM. And then I have a 4 terabyte SSD storage. And then other than that, everything else is pretty standard. So as you can see, my total got pretty high. If you are a teacher or an educator, or you're in school, or you know somebody in school, Apple will do pretty good education discounts, and you can normally order it through one of their profiles, and you can probably save like $400 or $500. So this is kind of the entire build that I did. If you were to just get a pretty basic build, let's say you do a standard display, you do 48 gigs of memory, which is enough for most, you do 1 terabyte, you're looking at about $4,000. I decided to buy once, cry once, and just fully loaded this thing. The only thing that I didn't do was upgrade to 8 terabytes of storage because it would have added another $1,200. And to remedy that, I can actually go here and show you in my libraries. This is an external drive. This is a Samsung T9. And this is 4 terabytes. This is what I'm loading all of my contact instruments, all of my East-West, Spitfire, any of my really, really big libraries that take, hundreds of gigs. They're going on this because Mac storage is super expensive. An extra 4 terabytes would have cost me $1,200 in my MacBook. This thing cost me like $350. It's extremely fast. I have no latency. So I will kind of go over how I'm running everything off of my computer. But just know that I'm running 4 terabytes internal, and then I always have that 4 terabyte library drive attached. So other than that, let's go ahead and just talk about how I have everything laid out. So you'll see here that on my main, I have my downloads, which I try to keep empty, documents, and then I've just got folders for pretty much everything over here. And then really the only thing that stays plugged in all the time, whether I'm in the studio or taking it away, is this library drive. I've gone ahead and attached this with a little sticker basically that you can pop on the back of your MacBook. You can slide your drive right in there and it stays plugged in pretty much all the time. And then I also have my iLock plugged into my MacBook physically. Other than that, everything else stays in the studio, like the new sessions, my old sessions, my backup drives, all of that stays plugged into the studio. I'll talk about that in just a little bit when I talk about a docking station. But just know, all of my programs, all of my plugins, all of my files, and most of my small samples stay natively on my MacBook. And really, I'm only pulling the massive, massive libraries off of that external drive, but I went ahead and splurged and got the fastest one that I could find. So if you're going to use an external drive, get an SSD, get one that's super, super fast. Otherwise, you're going to have loading issues, you're going to have latency issues, you're going to have dropouts. It's an expensive thing to do music production, but if you're going to do it, you might as well just invest and get the best thing that you can get. So that's kind of my computer setup. Fully loaded MacBook with a 4 terabyte SSD. It's the Samsung T9 attached to it pretty much all the time. So now that I've talked about that, let's talk about actually getting this thing set up, right? Like, what did it actually take to get this computer up and running? I did a fresh install of everything, so a fresh install of Cubase 14. I did a fresh install of all of my software, all of my plugins, all of my libraries, and then basically the only things that I brought over physically from my last computer were like my one-shot drum samples, some of my Serum presets, some of my preferences for Cubase, like Cubase templates. But other than that, when I get a new computer, I like to do a fresh install. It keeps everything clean. It keeps everything formatted for Mac instead of for Windows. And then I haven't really had any issues opening anything and running it off of this M4. The only plugin that I've had kind of constant issue with is Sublab, but Sublab XL is not giving me an issue, and I think that Sublab is planning on doing an update for the M3 and M4. So with that said, I'm not having compatibility issues. Everything's loading fine. Let's talk about performance for 1 second. This computer is super, super powerful. My last computer was a beast. I built it. I did a whole video on that if you want to see how I built a custom PC for music production. But this thing is much, much, much more powerful. So here is an example. Here's a mix that I'm doing right now, a mix and a production. So I've got virtual instruments, I've got live instruments, I've got tons of inserts, I've got a mastering chain on here, and total, we're just working on it, but it's right at like 140 tracks. I'm able to run this with a bit rate of like 256, so I have no latency. I can run this while I play like the Corey Wong amp and standalone and screen cap at the same time. This computer literally hasn't even gotten close. If I play this, this is a massive session. I'll leave everything muted so we can't, hear it because it's not out yet from the artist, but let's pull up an activity monitor and just see what this big ol' session's doing. And this is with me screen capping. Yeah, so I'm screen capping right now in 4K, and I'm playing this massive, massive, massive session, and we're using 6.5% of the system, 13% total. If I were to stop it, let me unmute it just so I can kind of make sure that it's not just playing it easy, but let's play it just to make sure. Yeah, so with a bit rate of 256, which is very, very low, me running a screen cap and playing this entire mix that's 140 tracks with things like Gold Clip, Mixhead. I have Orion by Cradle Audio. I have Pro L running in like an oversample mode. This thing is a beast. I haven't even gotten this to 30%. Basically, when I edit one of our reels for Instagram, it's a 90-second reel. We edit them in 4K. We do a bunch of other stuff to them. That will normally take about, on my last computer, which was an M1, it would take about 5 minutes to export, and it takes 15 seconds on this new one. So if you're worried about getting a MacBook, granted, I fully loaded this thing, but you could probably get it with half the specs and be able to run 200 tracks very, very, very easily. So performance is wild on this. It's like miles and miles above my fully spec'd out PC. And the last thing that I want to talk about before I talk about why I chose a Mac and why I'm on a laptop now instead of a desktop is the fact that you do not need to repurchase any software, any plugins, any tools. As long as you have licenses that can transfer computers via iLock or cloud licensors or whatever kind of drivers that they have, whether that's, like a license file, no reputable software company is going to make you repurchase a license for Mac or for Windows. If you buy the plugin or you buy the software, it's basically made for either platform. So with that said, if you are focused on being worried that if you are on Windows and you move to Mac, you're going to lose a bunch of stuff, you're not going to lose anything. As long as it's compatible with a Mac or it's compatible with a Windows, that license is good to go forever. I just wanted to clarify that because I got so many DMs saying, Austin, are you going to have to repurchase hundreds, if not thousands of plugins? Are you going to have to repurchase Cubase? Are you going to have to repurchase all of your sample packs? No. That's what things like iLock are for. That's what things like cloud licenses are for. That's what activation licenses are for. You should not have to worry about it. Also, most plugins come with 2, if not 5 activations. Like I've activated Omnisphere on like 5 computers since I bought it, and they've all been mine. I've owned all of them, but as long as you're not abusing it and you're not giving out licenses, companies are pretty chill with the fact that you've purchased a license from them. They will make sure that you can set that up on any computer that you have. Now let's get to the juicy part. I'm sure that there's going to be comments very, very pissed off that I swapped from PC to Mac, or from Windows to Mac, I should say. So let's just talk about why I decided to go with Mac when I was building out my new kind of computer rig. The main reason, for one, is because it's just so seamless. I have an iPhone, we have iPads in the house. I've always edited all of our videos on a MacBook. And so I'm used to the Mac layout. For a long time, Macs were just so expensive that I built that other PC that I've been using for years. I built that for like $3,000. This costs $6,000, so it is not even close to the same budget. But if you have the budget and if you're willing to invest, I love that I can pull up my iMessages. I love that I can drag files straight into a text message. I love that I can sync my iTunes with everything. I love that I can basically pull this session up on another MacBook in the house because we're all sharing a network. It's just so much easier, and I think that being on Mac, there's just so many little workflow things that you don't realize when you're on an iPhone and then a PC, or a PC and then you work off of a MacBook. I do everything off of this one computer now. All of the tutorials, all of my real production, all of our video editing, all of that Miranda doesn't do, all of my, photo editing, Photoshop, everything is on this one computer. So yes, it was really expensive, but being in the kind of Apple ecosystem, it's just so seamless. It's so nice to be able to airdrop things from my phone to the computer, or to be able to, just really have it all be in the same family, because file sharing was really, really annoying between my iPhone and a MacBook and a PC. If you have the money, I think Macs are super, super stable. I think that the actual M processors are much better than the Intel and the Ryzen processors or whatever. This is way better. I had an i9 in my last computer, and this M4 Max is smoking it. So not only is Apple good for the performance, obviously, I just like the workflow. I like the seamlessness. I like that it's integrated with everything. You have Time Machine backups. It's just really, really nice to have everything with Apple. That said, Apple is not inherently the best. I know that there's going to be a lot of PC warriors. I've used Windows for my entire career. You can build a Windows computer for much less than this costs, but I always ran into the issue where I would build a Windows computer and then 2 or 3 years later, everything was pretty out of date. I was having to always get new computers. I've gone through like 4 main studio computers. I plan to have this MacBook for like probably 8 to 10 years. So in that sense, I think it'll pay itself off. I don't like upgrading my PC. I've always thought, if I get a custom PC, I can just add more RAM. I can add a new processor. I'm never going to actually do that. I've had 4 PCs. I've never actually gone in, opened it up, and redid it. So with that said, I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to buy once, cry once, get the MacBook that I want, and have everything set. And so I guess let's talk about why I chose a laptop instead of something like the Mac Mini or the Mac Studio, because you can get those for less expensive. If I took these exact same specs, basically, you could probably get the Mac Studio for closer to $4,000. I haven't really priced it out exactly, but the reason that I chose the laptop is because I want to be more portable. I love the studio that I've built. However, sometimes I just want to be able to unplug my computer and take it somewhere and make a beat at a coffee shop, take it to another studio and work off of my computer. I want to be able to go sit at my kitchen table, and if I'm just, doing emails, be like, let me just open Cubase. And even in the only 1 month that I've had this MacBook, I've already done that so many times. So to me, to have the freedom to take it to a writing camp, take it to another studio, travel to Nashville, go to LA, make a beat sitting at my pool, this MacBook will pay itself off immediately. Like, it's literally only going to take 1 weekend of a writing trip, and this whole thing is paid off. So I hated being stuck with a desktop at home, because every time I would travel, I'd have to work off of other studio computers. I'd have to work off of Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton. And there's nothing wrong with those. I'm just not used to it. I would rather just have my setup be my setup all the time. I could literally unplug it from the studio and do this exact same session on AirPods sitting at my kitchen table. It doesn't really need anything in here. So with that said, that's why I wanted a laptop. I really like being mobile. This next chapter of my life, I plan to travel a little bit more. I plan to get out of the house a little bit more. And having a MacBook is the best way to do it. I will say that you do pay a bit of a tax when it comes to laptops. This is what I wanted to show you earlier when I was actually talking about Mac and PC. This thing is expensive, right? You're looking at like right around $6,000. Even if you were to do a Windows laptop, this is $5,500. And this is pretty much the same specs, same kind of benchmarks that you would get. So this is an i9 processor. I think the M4 Max is better. This is an NVIDIA graphics card, which is fine. That's what I had in my old computer. But this has the 40-core GPU. I actually think that the screen on the MacBook is a bit nicer than the screen on the Lenovo. This is also a 4 terabyte SSD. So essentially to get the exact comp, you're talking $500 cheaper. To me, it's not worth it, especially if you can get an education discount. These two computers are the same price. So while there used to be a massive Mac tax, I don't think it's that crazy anymore now that, Apple is doing their own M chips. If this was an Intel MacBook, 5-6 years ago, this probably would have been 10 grand. I think at this point, unless you just really prefer the workflow of PC, and if you're going to go for a laptop, there's no reason not to do the MacBook because they're not much more expensive than just getting a PC. Like I said before, you do pay that tax because you have a screen built in, you have a keyboard built in, but the portability, at least for me personally, I think will pay itself off in dividends rather than just having a computer sit in the corner like I have for 7 years now. All right, this is a part of the video that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. I'm sure if people visited the chapters below, this one's getting skipped to, but it's how do I actually connect my MacBook to my entire studio? I have a lot of connections, right? I've got a MIDI keyboard here. I've got a keyboard that has MIDI down here. I've got 3 keyboards that have MIDI over there. I've got this ultra wide screen in front of me. I've got an interface. I've got tons of other peripherals, extra drives. I've got a keyboard and I've got a mouse. How am I actually connecting everything? So everything in my studio can connect to my MacBook with one cable, and it's by using something called a docking station. This is what a docking station looks like. It is rather expensive, but to me, you're already spending the insane money on a Mac, especially a laptop. This is so worth it because what it does is it essentially allows me to connect everything into the back of this, and then there's one cable that comes out to my MacBook. There's no latency, there's no dropouts, there's no bottlenecking with data. Let me show you how I actually have mine set up. If we go to here, this is a DisplayPort. That's what my screen is connected to. You could do HDMI, you could do DisplayPort, or you could just do a USB-C. Most displays will connect with any of those. Outside of that, you have 4 USB, kind of 2.0, 3.0, and then you have a couple Thunderbolt/USB-C. And then this is what actually connects to the MacBook. So going into here, I have a screen coming into the DisplayPort. I have basically just a little USB hub to not use all of these for my slower peripherals. So the Arturia, the Roland DS88, the Poly Brute, the Moog Sub 37, those are all going into one little dongle, and that's coming into here because they're so low speed, I don't want to take up 4 ports for that. Then I have my interface going into here as well, and then I have an external drive going into this back, and then a backup drive coming straight into here, and you also have blank spaces in the front. So if somebody brings a laptop and they want to plug in their hard drive, they can plug them in here. If you want to plug in an SD card, you can do that right here. So essentially everything gets plugged in. And then I have one USB-C cable coming out of here, actually going into my MacBook. And then I just have my MacBook in this little stand where it can sit upright. That runs my entire studio. So if I come in, all I have to do is plug in that one USB-C cable. This will turn on. These will connect. My interface will connect and swap over. Everything is good to go with one cable, and it's set up in about 10 seconds. If somebody else wants to bring in their MacBook, all they have to do is download the driver for my RME interface, and once they download that and set that up, they can plug their MacBook in and they can have access to everything. Because through the interface, they can control the speakers, they can control all the preamps and compressors and hardware, and then through all of the USB, they can control any MIDI keyboards, they can control, physical MIDI. Basically, all anybody has to do is download one driver, plug in one cable, and then you can run my entire studio. This was huge. I got this tip from Jonathan Morrison when I visited his studio. He was like, there's no reason that every studio shouldn't just have a docking station. And yes, it is expensive. If you don't need one, you could probably get, something a little bit more simple. You could get something like this, just like a little docking hub. But for me, using really, really fast hard drives, using a lot of peripherals, I wanted something that was going to be really, really fast, something really seamless, where you didn't have to download drivers for it. So it's plug and play. I love it. It's one of the best $300 items I've ever purchased for the entire studio. And then I'm using the Mac keyboard and the Mac Magic mouse. These just connect Bluetooth, so they don't even have to take up a port. It is by far the most seamless integration of anything that I've ever used, and I love it. It's really, really, really been a game changer. So the last thing that I'll talk about is, do I recommend it? Coming from PC to Mac, I 100% recommend, if you have the budget to just really invest and get a good Mac, I think that the performance is a little bit better for what you pay for. I think that the integration, especially if you're an iPhone user, is literally incredible. Time Machine is a great backup system. You can use things like Logic. I haven't been able to ever even really try that outside of other studios. You can use things like Final Cut Pro. There's just so much cool software that's made for Apple specifically. And then other than that, just they're super, super sturdy, right? Like you're not going to run into a bunch of virus issues. You're not going to run into issues where all of the hardware is getting outdated so fast. It really is such a seamless piece of equipment for me to kind of incorporate. So yes, I recommend it. The new M4 Max chips are absolutely incredible. I haven't had any compatibility issues. I haven't had, other than that one plugin Sublab, I haven't had any plugins that don't respond well to the M4 Max. I haven't had anything that I brought over from Windows and load up to here and there's a bunch of big issues. Literally, I opened up one of my biggest sessions ever that I did on my computer last year, opened it right up on the Mac, and it ran it at like, I think 18% of my CPU usage. So yes, I recommend it. You don't have to spec it fully out and get a $6,000 MacBook if you're not doing insane sessions. You could probably build an incredible one for $3,000. And that's still a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of how much all of this shit costs, $3,000, especially if you're doing this professionally, is a well worth it investment. So that is all the details on my new computer. I've gotten so many questions. Hopefully this answered all of those. If you have other questions, you can let me know in the comments down below. I'll answer whatever I can. But other than that, I'll be back next Friday with another video for all of y'all. Again, if you want to enter that giveaway, leave a comment before January 20th. I'll pick a winner on our Instagram. And then other than that, I'll see you guys soon. Much love. Peace.